Hello and welcome to an Infinity the Game battle report. Today we're playing Dashat Company versus Vanilla Haqqislam and the scenario is Frontline. Big thanks to channel supporter Sneaky Snake for the request that led to this video. As always, if you want to request ideas, concepts or lists for battle reports, channel supporters are welcome to do so. You can support the channel either via the Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description or by becoming a channel member. We'll go through a couple of Dashat lists, iterations that I made in advance of recording this battle report, but first let's have a look at the Haqqislam list I'll be playing against today. So this is a variation on a relatively Canberra standard Haqqislam good stuff list, but with a twist to include basically increasing amounts of MSV2 smoke shooting. In Canberra, as a general observation, I would note that there are fewer and fewer full 6 cents core links. They are by no means unknown, but they're rarer than they used to be, say, at the beginning of N4. And where there are big, powerful 6 cents core links, they're often going to be, for example, CanCon winner Rob Wright's observance links, which are packing lots of mimetism and which you want MSV2 against in any case. So this is a kind of local adaptation, but I think it's an interesting and cool local adaptation that you could potentially apply elsewhere, which was really interesting to play against today. So we have 3 primary gunfighters in this list, and they are all MSV2 shooters backed up by an ample quantity of smoke. So we have the Janbazan HMG, which is probably the rarest inclusion in a list like this, but the Janbazan is a piece whose time has like come, gone, and come again, off the back of meta changes around it. I wouldn't necessarily include it in every or even many list. It's not like a me style of model. He's a little bit fragile, but it is ballistic skill 12, heavy machine gun, smoke shooting on a reasonably resilient platform for a cost that still allows this list to include everything else that it wants. We then have Yara Haddad and a Mukhtar, which means collectively this list can put out reasonably high quality smoke shooting off of a HMG, AP, and shock platform, all with decent enough burst, which at least theoretically means that there is no individual target that this list absolutely cannot engage, although there are some things you'd be less willing to than others. These are all relatively cheap gunfighting pieces, though, at 34, 25, and 36 points respectively, which means that with the rest of the Haqqislam economy package in play, the list can afford an Asawira Doctor with 2 Nazmats. Now, an Asawira Doctor is something of an acquired piece as well, but it is definitely to my taste. When I can put it in lists, I love to do so. It's a piece that just does a great deal while at the same time adding a huge amount of utility. 2 Nazmats also allows it to support the full package of models here, which gives us a really kind of like complete offensive package just in the first combat group, backed up by Saladin, which we then support with the rest of the list. But we support it in a Haqqislam way, which is to say there is no dead weight. There is not a single model in this list whose only purpose is to generate orders, apart from maybe Saladin, and he is Saladin. So for the rest of the list, we have the Barid Hacker and Barid Killer Hacker and Guided Missile Remote package. Using up a fair bit of SWC, but very few points, you will not really find better value hacking package in the game than those 3 models. Zalekia Narazova, who is outstanding and provides some smoke. Another Kumbhiker, providing some smoke. Matawiya. Now, this is the 10-point Matawiya specifically because Kyle wanted both smoke and a jammer, and to get that, you have to pay the full 10-point premium. This model does have the option of going offensive, using its boarding shotgun, etc. It can be very, very useful to have a piece like this in your list if you can afford it over the cheaper warbands that you would have access to in Haqqislam. And in this case, Kyle really wanted... It's going to pretty much play Smoke Caddy to the Janbazan, but it's going to do so in a way that allows it to respond with things like the Jammer or the Boarding Shotgun if needed in a close assault role. We then have a Liberto and 2 Dalami, which again, for like 24 points, you really couldn't ask for a better midfield defensive ablative package, and a Hassassin for day, paying the 1 extra point just to get the DACCW, which is a very worthwhile upgrade. Coming in at 5.5 SWC and 300 points, this has the MSV2 firepower package, which I think is fairly unique and an interesting exploration, but otherwise this is just a really, really good, solid Haqqislam value across the board, nothing wasted, no slot wasted, 15 troopers, all of which you can rely upon to do something useful as part of a broader battle plan. I would play this list in almost any scenario under almost any circumstance, and I really like it. Now, for Dashat Company, the request for today's battle report was to play a Zuyong core. And this is something that's outside my comfort zone, but list requests for battle reports often are, and I'm happy to engage with them. But the Zuyong core is something that you can absolutely play in Dashat Company and still have plenty of points for other things. The nature of Zuyongs is that they aren't that expensive themselves. They're a relatively lean profile, mostly I think thanks to the fact that the breaker pistols aren't costed, they're kind of free, and they're only armor 3 models otherwise. But then Dashat Company supports them with just an absolute plethora of very cheap, very efficient, very lean pieces, which allows you to run, if you want to, a full Zuyong pure core and still have plenty of points for other things. Now, in the run up to this battle report, I had a couple of thoughts around how to play this, including one I felt that wasn't quite in the spirit of the challenge. That being, my personal preferred Zuyong core in Dashat is one Zuyong HMG Tactical Awareness, one Zuyong Paramedic or Valyria Gromos, and a Digger, and that's it. That is not really what is being asked for when someone asks for a Zuyong core, though. So despite the fact that I could easily have run two of those teams and say I was playing with a Zuyong core and a Zuyong Harries, that would have included probably a maximum of 3 Zuyongs in the entire list, which is not what we're looking to do here. So this is the first of two lists that I wrote, and I think this one probably has the greatest potential. This is a full pure Zuyong core, and it's trading on a couple of ideas. It's got two Tactical Awareness HMG Zuyongs, a Tactical Awareness Tinbot -6 Zuyong, and then two Zuyong Paramedics. The reason why there are two Zuyong Paramedics in this list, apart from the fact that I could afford them, so why not, is that Zuyongs natively have number 2 as a rule, which means that if you lose, say, one of those HMGs in the active turn, the link is not going to break, it's just going to pass over to a new leader, which means that it's very efficient to then just immediately have one of those young paramedics pick up the link leadership role without needing to be the link leader, and just immediately go and on ballistic skill 14 +3 for range, double medikit at short range, and try and bring the down Zuyong back. I went with two paramedics to ensure I had redundancy for that, although one of the things this link is missing is close assault. Because Zuyongs have got +1 burst breaker pistols and many of them have combis, this list absolutely, the link can fight at close range. But if you're going to run a core link like this, I do like to include a boarding shotgun or something equivalent in it. Firstly, just having the template availability is very, very useful. But secondly, the math gets really interesting when you start stacking core bonuses with a shotgun, because it means that that ballistic skill 13 Zuyong at close range against an opponent out of cover with a shotgun is rolling in at ballistic skill 22 burst 3. And it is really, really hard to win a face-to-face roll against 3 dice on 22s. So that's something that I like to have if I can, but in this case, the double paramedic thing was something I wanted to use more. But I think as the rest of the list shaped out, if I had something to spend those remaining 2 points on, it's actually something that I would change. I would consider putting the shotgun back in. Otherwise, we have two Ghulams, a lieutenant and a decoy, McMurra because McMurra, two Libertos, although one of them is the submachine gun and one of them is the light shotgun, just because of SWC restrictions, and a Katyusha tractor mule. The Katyusha tractor mule is in here because I wanted some guided in the list just as an option. It's very, very cheap, and in particular, it's only one SWC, so it's easy to afford. We then have a single Comb Rider, and the second concept to test in this particular list was the idea of a pure 3-person support team. So normally I would run this kind of a team maybe with, say, a Ghulam NCO for a grenade launcher, smoke grenade launcher, etc. But that does cost SWC. But what I'm looking to do with this Harries, which is Valyria Gromos, a Ghulam Doctor, and a Bounty Hunter Red Fury, is literally just operate in pure support of the Zuyong core. So move up and be unhackable, deal with things like repeaters, use the Doctor potentially to recover downed elements, secondary firepower just for cleaning off bits and pieces, and then Gromos to lay down picture elements. And there is baggage in this list thanks to the Katyusha, right? So she can reload if she needs to. Use Gromos to lay down repeater networks where it would be useful to do so. Otherwise, you just have the usual value package. So there's the two Libertos, the Cum Rider, etc. Plenty of dangerous irregular pieces. This is a list I actually seriously wanted to play. And the only reason that I didn't is that the second version of the list, which is the meme version of the list, occurred to me. So I will probably get to this list at some point, may not do a battle report on it, but I think it has serious potential as a concept, and I'm very interested to try it. What I actually played is the list that's on screen now. Now, I don't think I recommend this as a list. I justified it to myself mostly because we agreed to play Frontline, where you can kind of argue that some of what the list is doing is worthwhile. But mostly what we're doing here is testing a few of the same ideas I had with that previous Suyong team, but we are really leaning into the fact that Dashat Company, of all Armies can absolutely run a value package to support expensive pieces. Now, this was not actually the final version of the list. There's one change I made that I'll talk about that was we made just before making the game, and it really is just to spend that last 1 point that's available. We'll talk about that as we go through. So this has it's got a full Zuyong core. It's running the double paramedic and the Zuyong boarding shotgun, and then just in order to afford SWC and to fit everything else in this list, we have just the one Tactical Awareness HMG Zuyong, and then the Lieutenant Regeneration HMG Zuyong, because he is only one SWC, and he gives me a second heavy machine gun. One of the things I am cutting, and which in retrospect I think is probably worth fitting into the list, is just trying to find a couple of points to turn one of these Zuyong paramedics into a Tinbot Tactical Awareness Zuyong, and we'll get to why that would have been particularly helpful this game as we play through. Nevertheless, this is a fully effective, like full power Zuyong core with almost all of the things that I want. And then we also have a Magariba Guard in Combat Group 2, because if there's any faction that can run a full heavy infantry corps and still fit a main battle tag and hit 15 troopers, it's Dashat Company. I don't actually know if there's any faction that can realistically do this, like, and actually have a complete list in the sense that this list is at least nominally complete. I think any company can do this other than Dashat Company. So if we're going to lean into the Xeon Core, let's go all the way. Let's just embrace the fact that the Xeon Core is cheap, and I can support it with things like 3 Fanus remotes, 2 Libertos, in this case both Mine Layer Libertos, I could accommodate that. And then what we're going to have in the end is 3 Coom Riders. So these 2 Tractor Mules, one of them is going to turn into a Chain Rifle Coom, which means rounding out the list, we have Coom Rider with Light Shotgun, Coom Rider with Chain Rifle, Libertos Mine Layer, Tractor Mule, Coom Rider with Light Shotgun, Libertos Mine Layer, and then 3 Fanus remotes. So is this list kind of a meme? Yeah, it absolutely is. You have a single legal lieutenant profile who is hackable and has no hacking defense. Like, don't run exactly this version of the list. Find a couple points and just turn this damn Zuyong into a Tinbot Tack-aware. Even 1 point, right? Just downgrade one of those Coom Riders into a light shotgun. Yes, it's not nearly as good. Just deal with it. Get the Tinbot in there. It will pay dividends, and we'll see that in this particular game. But the broad concept of the list works. I don't particularly want to play it again. I feel like playing it once was like, yay, that was an experience. And I wouldn't play this list if, for example, I could play Availability 2 Magariba Guards, because then I would just play that instead and lean all in on the meme. But it was fun, it was interesting, and it absolutely meets the goal of flexing a Zuyong core in a way that really only Dashat Company can do in terms of the list around it. So, Sneaky Snake, hope you enjoy this battle report. Let's crack on with it. So, as noted, the scenario is Frontline, which means 4 classifieds, QAZ zones, a deployable turret, and scoring otherwise at the end of the game. Because I've chosen not to take a Ghulam Lieutenant this particular game, roll a 14 for my Lieutenant roll. Kyle rolls a 15, wins the roll with Saladin, and elects to set up second on the left side of the table. Because of the end of game scoring, Kyle's relatively happy going second. Also, he's playing Haqqislam and is insulated by layer upon layer upon layer of high-quality, cheap irregulars. Nevertheless, I'm not going to let him deploy after me and take a clean swing with a Hassassin for day, so I choose to go first. And how we set up our deployment basically is we set up some fairly aggressively postured irregular attack pieces of our own with the intention of supporting them with big guns. I've got big guns. I can have the big guns in multiple places, although the Maggie will be my reserve drop. I'll deploy her reactively. And I'm looking to push with the irregulars, potentially, or at least bait out an ARO response with the irregulars that I can then engage with my big guns. So we deploy an irregular with its mines here, as a Libertos with its mines here, a Libertos with its mines here. If I was going second, they would not be positioned like that, but I'm intending to potentially move them forward early, so I'm really not bothering with shell games. We then have a Coom Rider here, an Impetuous Coom Rider here, and then another Coom Rider, not Impetuous, back there. The 3 Fanus are just deployed prone in various locations. They aren't even really repeaters in this particular list, so they're just going to hang out, chill, and generate orders. Maybe bait in a Fidei. If a Fidei kills 1 Fanus and nothing else for the rest of the game, I'm totally happy with that. And then the Zuyong core deploys around here. All on ground level, because I do expect to move them on the first turn. The 2 HMGs, the paramedic, etc. They are split up in a way where it would be possible for a Fidei shotgun to clip any 2 of them, but not more than that. One of the things that I would do if I was Kyle, as my opponent in this particular game, deploying to engage those Zuyongs is try and set up with a splash over the multiple models with a shotgun, and you want to make sure that Zuyongs can bait that in because they're not going to die to just a single shotgun template, but you want to make sure that it's not a completely clean, like 3 wounds across the entire link. For Kyle's part, he will reserve drop his Hassassin for day down here, which is nothing I can do about it. But the rest of his deployment is standard profile defensive Haqqislam setup, and what that means is a mix of camouflage markers as ARO pieces, and then everything else hunkered the hell down behind repeaters. So the guided missile remote of Kyle's is safe back here, Zalekia is safe back here, Saladin is safe back here. I'm never going to get to any of those over the course of, I'll probably never going to get to any of those over the course of the entire game. Yara Haddad is prone at ground level here. Now she is likely to have issues getting smoke, but if we think about my deployment up till this stage, there's nothing that she's realistically going to engage. This is not so far her kind of a game. Other pieces will be more important, and those pieces include the Janbazan over here with its, so the Janbazan here with its caddy Mutawiya there, ready to give it smoke and protect it with a jammer. We have the Kumbaika here and the turret here, and then the Asawira is on these stairs, the hacker, regular hacker, Barid is over here, the killer hacker is over here, and there is a standing flash pulse remote over here, and then 2 Dalami with quite good lines of fire, including through the QAZ zones here and here, which will help protect them if I want to engage them. Now, the QAZ zones have had a big impact on deployment this game. Kyle has placed his here, I've placed mine here, and that means that we are very much funneled around the flanks, right? So there are lanes up the board, because no one wants to move through those things. They do damage to units, and I could probably rush a Magariba Guard through there if I wanted to. The damage is not high enough to be a huge threat, but really everything else, particularly all of our mutual single wound pieces, is going to be forced around the sides of the table, up, over, and around, and through the various sort of like lanes up the board that don't just cut through the middle. So with relatively few, like there's just a standard defense, and with these Dalami positioned quite centrally, there's no need for me to hang the Magariba Guard, say all the way over here, on something like this location here, which is what I was considering for it. So I just ponk it down with the Zuyongs with the intention of absolutely concentrating force up one part of the table. Carl then deploys his Fidei in this corner here, and we crack on with the game. He takes orders away from my Zuyong core, which I'm totally fine with. Both of my groups in this list, it's a 10-7 split. Both groups are relatively self-sufficient. So the first thing that we do is we move this biker around here, and it actually moves in a way where it, so if you think about this like a little corner here, the Fidei is in that corner. The biker moves to pin the Fidei into the corner and makes a discover roll and succeeds, and then makes a second discover roll, and Kyle has the absolute balls of steel to just be like, nope, not going to do anything, make your discover roll. I discover shoot, needing a 17, and I roll a 19. So Kyle's absolute just cold-bloodedness regarding his Fidei is rewarded, and I don't have the resources to go after it. I mean, I could move the Magariba back, but I don't want to get sucked back into my DZ, particularly given that the Fidei is relatively neutralized. It's going to have to like punch into the Coom Raider, which has a shotgun, a chain rifle, this particular one has. I can leave it for now. So what we do is we start going about the process of what I wanted to do, which is to try and unpick Kyle's arrow and force his Dalami out of hiding. The first thing we do is that the Magariba Guard engages this Fanus up here, and it takes 2 orders, but I put that Fanus down. That's about usually what you would expect. Cool, one model down for the count. We then move this biker out and around here, and as she crosses through this threshold here, one of the 2 Dalami responds with the Panzerfaust. She rolls for smoke with the ARO and succeeds getting the smoke down, and then we'll come around here. Yara dodges, she moves into CC with Yara. Yara fires with the heavy pistol, I make a CC attack and Yara wins, but I pass my armor roll, and I just leave her in combat. I'll just leave them there. I don't want to deal with that. Basically, Yara is more effectively neutralized by just leaving the Coom Rider in combat, and I don't have enough orders to go against that over and over and over. The cleanest way for Kyle to deal with it would be to bring the Asawira all the way around here, and if he wants to spend the orders doing that, he's welcome to do so on his turn, because I've got business in this part of the table. So with one of the Dalami revealed, we now have a relatively clean chance to move the Zuyong core up and around, and they move to occupy kind of like this territory here. Because of the range bands involved, I actually bring the combi rifle up, and the combi rifle moves to a position, firstly where it can, so what are we looking to do is discover, shoot, and we delete this one, and then we delete this one, and it takes multiple orders, but we put both Dalami down. I think we are actually able to engage the top one first. It's a relatively clean shot, and we're only using a combi. I think it takes 2 orders to put it down. Then we move to discover shoot the second Dalami, take that out as well. So we really haven't killed a great deal with this kind of action. The best we're able to do, apart from the 2 Dalami, is get the HMG up onto this rooftop where it can see this Tomb Raider, and we put that down as well. And under normal circumstances, 4 casualties against your opponent on the first turn is usually, that's about what you would call a good first turn. If you can secure 4 kills, that's pretty all right. However, in this case, 4 kills have been 3 irregulars and 1 regular, and we've killed a net total of 30 points. And killing 10% of your opponent's army on a first turn swing out of the gate is maybe not what you necessarily want to accomplish, but it is the nature of Haqqislam's ablative irregular defenses, and that's not going to be something that's in place to hold for a second round. So you really just have to take your licks here. You have to deal with these pieces before you can progress, because particularly something like a Dalami, letting a Dalami force you into playing around it the entire game is just, it's not efficient. And a Dalami does not present the same threat that, say, a Helot does, in terms of yes, it's potentially more threatening to something like a tag, running out of cover against it. But Dalami are pieces that really you do want to just engage and suppress and move on, because letting them have run of the board and dictate fire lanes is just far too efficient for the Haqqislam player. Now, a secondary goal for this turn is to actually set up some relatively strong ARO pieces. Because Kyle is running all of this MSV2 shooting, one of the weaknesses of his list is that he doesn't necessarily want to just engage 6th Sense, fully pure core linked heavy infantry in a gunfight. That's not a fight that the Janbazan, for example, wants to take, and I'm going to end the turn with combi rifles in positions like here with good overwatch angles, the HMG here with good overwatch angles. One thing I do is I pull the lieutenant as far back as he can be and still be in coherency with the rest of the squad, because I don't want him getting Oblivion hacked. I haven't put down either of the Barids, but otherwise we are projecting sort of like quite a lot of ARO presence into Kyle's deployment zone. This is an aggressive play, and I don't know if I would do the same thing if I was running, say, the first iteration of the link, but in this case I have the Magariba Guard as backup, and I feel that it's at least worth trying. The Haqqislam list that Kyle is playing is heavily asymmetric, irregular. It wants to pick its fight, it wants to engage on its terms, it wants to use cheap units effectively against expensive units. And so trying to force it into a position where it has to engage on my terms, where I have the bigger guns, having identified that, yes, in this matchup I have the bigger guns, felt worthwhile. Kyle, however, will unpick this really, really well, and he will do so off the back of the vaunted Assassin Barid. So his rejoinder, his counterattack is going to be a primarily hacking-based one, which makes perfect sense given I have a whole bunch of Whip 13, BTS 3, no tin bot Zuyongs. And what he's able to do is get this Assassin Barid just to crawl around here. It doesn't go very, very far because it needs to avoid Zuyong line of fire, but it's able to draw line of fire to this part of the table there, and pop a pitcher down. And with the pitcher down, the second Assassin Barid just begins to have his wicked way with my link. Now, what he can't do is just hack the link leader and turn the link off, right? Because everything has number 2, he can't just Oblivion the link lead and break the link, which means he has a fair bit of work to do, but he goes about doing it. And he's able to do it basically pretty efficiently, and if I'd had a tin bot, this would probably have taken him a great deal longer. But I don't, so the first thing he does is he spotlights, which does a classified, the Zuyong HMG Takaware. It takes 4 missiles to put the Zuyong down, because with 6th Sense I'm dodging on 12s, and I am still a heavy infantry, but 4 missiles later it puts down the Zuyong HMG. He then Oblivions the link leader, not to break the link, but just to pull the link down to 3 troopers, so that I lose 6th Sense. And for good measure, he carbonates that model as well, which is a total mobility kill. The Zuyong can reset on 1s. It will attempt to do so, I think, 6 times over the course of the game, and it will never succeed. But it is worth noting, since we are playing Frontline and the Zuyong has gotten into the midfield, that model is still going to be, it's a Zuyong Paramedic. It will still be worth the 28 points in the midfield at the end of the game, even if it is a man sitting inside an inanimate coffin. After that, the Matalia throws smoke, the Zuyong spools up, and the Zuyong, after a bunch of shooting, will put down my second paramedic, leaving me with it takes out the body shotgun with hacking, leaving me with just a link of 2, a Zuyong paramedic and my Lieutenant HMG, which is really kind of not ideal. And definitely I have paid the price for basically for trying to have the Xeon core as lean as possible. I've paid the price for not having a tin bot. I've paid the price for putting it into this aggressive kind of ARO position. But we think about how the list is constructed. I am by no means out of guns. In fact, I still have a HMG, which is a perfectly serviceable weapon, and I still have a Magariba Guard, which is fully intact. It takes basically Kyle's entire turn to pin the link back, and he only kills 2 of those members, which means that I still actually have a reasonable amount of points to play with in the midfield. So, although the Xeon core has been basically thoroughly disrupted as an offensive element, in fact, it will do nothing else over the course of the game, offensively speaking, in terms of accomplishing my scenario goals, it is still relatively intact. So rolling into round 2, bonus feat picks, we can see that the Kum Rider is still sitting here engaging Yara Haddad, and although, yep, they're not going to be particularly visible, I assure you that there are a great many prone Zuyongs on various rooftops and positions around here. Now, really the one saving grace for this entire debacle on this rooftop is that I did have the Zuyong Lieutenant far enough back that it was not easy for Kyle to hack it with this repeater. Otherwise, he could basically have just gone for an Oblivion on this turn and caused me some serious pain. For that reason, I really don't necessarily recommend running a Zuyong Lieutenant unless you have no other choice. Try and find a way. Like there are definitely hackable lieutenants in the game that are 100% viable, but in an aggressively posturing core link, I'm not sure a Zuyong Lieutenant is one that I would include. Nevertheless, we're going to continue to try and deal damage and keep my elements intact, and we have a plan, and that plan involves the Magariba Guard. First, though, this Kum Rider will put down Yara over here, and then this Kum Rider will walk into combat with the... Sorry, not walk into combat, it will sit idle outside of combat with the Hassassin Fidei. It'll declare a Discover Shoot, and I think it will take me... I discover the Fidei, shoot it with a pistol, hit it twice, don't kill it, shoot it again with a pistol, and I put it unconscious. And just to note ahead of time, next turn I'm going to Impetuous into it, declare a CC attack, and perform a coup de grace, which will secure me Predator, which is the first of 3 classifieds I'll be able to do this game. So that's 2 kills already, just off of the back of these relatively cheap models. I will move later in the turn this biker around to occupy this position here. I had aspirations of getting off the bike, running up the stairs, and killing this guided missile remote, but realistically, the guided missile remote has already done the damage it's going to do over the course of this game, and I have other things that I need to do. And those things include the Magariba Guard yeeting up this flank. Now, I would not be doing this if this were the Bereed Hacker, or if this Fanus was still intact and prone, but because I was able to put the Fanus down on the first turn, and because this over here is the Killer Hacker, the Magariba Guard is able to come all the way up and around here. It puts down the turret over here. On the way through, or later in the turn, it will also put down the... it'll put down the Repeater, it will put down the Libertos over here. And you can't see it in this picture, but there is like one of these triangular barricades blocking sort of passage here. And what that means is that the Magariba is able to vault up onto it and back. And because of the position the Bereed has moved to, she's able to put her burst 3 pistols into his back and put him down as well. And that more or less removes the threat of repeaters in the part of the table where all of my hackable elements are. And all that's really left over here is a bunch of MSV shooting that isn't armor piercing. In fact, the Mukhtar is down here. I'm not scared of it at all. And the Magariba Guard settles down in this position here. She's got nice cover, 360 visor, and what I'm going to try and do is force Kyle into engaging her with pieces that he doesn't want. So the remaining armor-piercing firepower in his list is just the Asawira over here, and then like the breaker pistols on Zulekia, and neither of those is in any kind of a good position to engage this Magariba. I want the Magariba to draw fire, survive, and then be 101 points in a zone of my choosing in the end game. So she sets up to do that. That's really all of the damage I'm able to do this turn, but I am successively pruning away Kyle's pieces, the things that he's got that can contest me, establishing that attritional lead. I've only got 1 big gun left, and realistically Kyle has more than that, but we're building that final game, end of round 3 push that will put us in a dominant position that he can't recover from. Or at least that is the plan, and then the Janbazan spools up. So Kyle begins his turn. This Matalia just impetuouses, stands up, moves moves a millimeter, and throws smoke down here. Then the Janbazan moves around, jumps up onto this building, has to jump, there's no easy way across, but he just jumps up, sits in this position here, and then just starts shooting the Magaruba Guard. And the thing about heavy machine guns is if the face-to-face roll is good enough for you, you can threaten a tag with a Magaruba. Now, the math on this is that under normal circumstances, the Janbazan, if it gets unlucky, it's gonna die. Basically, the Magaruba is firing explosive rounds. If she crits, or if the Jambazan just whiffs everything and she rolls a 1 to hit, which often will happen before the Magaruba actually goes down, the Jambazan is dead. But that's not what happens here. What happens here is that the Jambazan engages, it starts standing, it goes prone, and it shoots a whole bunch of times. I roll like a 5, he rolls he rolls 1 hit, pass my save. He stands back up, he shoots a whole bunch, he scores 2 hits, I pass both saves. And then Carl's like, oh, I think I'm done here. And I do say, hey, your Jambazan is still standing up. He will die next turn. If he's sitting there in the open and the Magaruba just activates, he's dead. And Carl's like, oh, no, you're absolutely right. Yep. So he activates the Jambazan a 3rd time, sits back down, fires Magaruba Guard. I miss this time, and he scores 3 hits, and I roll a 1, a 3, and a 4 for my saves, needing 5s. And of course, by this point, I am inured to this happening to my tags. If I was able to keep it together after the Jotun died first order of round 1 in my recent Svalorheimer battle report, I can absolutely endure the death of a Murder Brigade. But I did definitely have a, oh, it's happening again kind of moment, because a game state that I had felt was relatively secure just became very, very insecure very, very quickly. I think, in fact, with the Magaruba's death, there's a non-zero chance that Kyle had more points left on the board than I did, and I got real freaking worried. However, as dice giveth, so dice taketh away. And if there's one thing that Dashat Company can do, it is carry you through a freaking game off the base of just one of their random 7 to 9 point irregulars grossly outperforming. And that is how Kyle's second turn will end. So we have this biker over here. It's moved around to this position here. It's not impetuous, and it's in cover. The Asawira has things to do and classifieds to accomplish, and so it moves around to here, and it begins to engage the Coom Rider. Now, it's first able to engage the Coom Rider from about this position here, and I just straight up roll to hit, needing 17s with my shotgun, and the Asawira rolls to hit back, and he whiffs, doesn't take any damage. Moves around, but he's really stuck in this kind of awkward position here, engaging inside of 8. Rolls to hit, I roll to hit, he elects for a face-to-face roll, because I'm rolling on 17s, I'm mimetism in cover, I'm happy doing this. And I win the face-to-face roll and takes a wound. And then with the last order of the turn, I know 12 prestige order, goes again, determined to put this Coom Rider down, because he doesn't want to face it in my active turn. And I crit, and he fails both saves, and the Asawira dies. And that's just a thing that Dashat Company will do, like, way more often than not. Is that these big, expensive, like 100-something point links, 80-point tag, they are not going to overperform, but you can absolutely bet your ass that something in the 7 to 9 point bracket will at some point over the course of a game. And so, right when I was just absolutely on the ropes, this Coom Rider has bailed me out and put me. We're still in a fragile position, but because all of the fighting is happening in like this space here, right, a long way from my deployment zone, I'm in a position to push through toward the end of the scenario. So turn 3 begins, and you can sort of take stock. You can see what I mean by that. So yes, we have an unconscious Magaruba in the corner here, having gone down in one volley of fire. But, like, my Coom Rider is here, my Zuyong Link is in this space here, the Libertos are posturing forward, the Lieutenant has moved his way around here, out of danger. I've got all of this stuff in this kind of space, and Kyle is pinned back behind that line, which means that for him to make a last turn push, just to get out of his deployment zone is not necessarily easy. I don't really have anything left in the tank in terms of offense, though. So, like we can see, Zalakia has moved forward here. She'll move back before the end of the round in her active turn. So, what I've got to work with really is just a bunch of irregulars. What we do, though, is we set about hoping that the momentum I've established is sufficient. I'm going to do some classifieds this turn. I've already done Predator for 1 point. This biker is going to. In fact, I'd finish Predator this turn by impetuousing into the unconscious assassin for day and securing a point. I'm going to just try and deal with Zelekia first. So this Libertos stands up and around and engages with a shotgun at 16. She actually goes for a dodge as soon as she sees the camouflage marker, and she yeets back here. So she ends up back here, at line of sight of the Libertos. That's fine. The Libertos is revealed. He'll just crawl back to where he was, getting inside 8 inches of Kyle's HVT. We then dismount the Coom Rider, come up and around here. Takes a couple of orders, but we move around first to see Zelekia, but she gets smoked down. I tried. It is what it is. And then around here to put down the Shaitina remote, which really I'm not concerned about getting guided missiles. I just want to take a regular order out of Kyle's pool. And then we move the Coom Rider with like the last order it has of access to up onto this bridge here. Just I want it to shoot things. I want Kyle to have to spend an order to kill it in his active turn, on the next turn, and for no other purpose. We then spend one order on the Magari Brigade. Now, the Magari Brigade is unconscious, but the pilot can still activate. And so the pilot crawls out of the Magari Brigade and places a decharge on this building here and scores me sabotage. She was the only model that could do sabotage in my entire list, so I'm glad that she was alive. But my choice was between either, I think it was suspected infiltration or sabotage, and I don't want to ever have to do suspected infiltration. It's the new net undermine, and trying to do it sucks. Finally, the Zuyong lieutenant, who's positioned himself last turn around here, moves around this way, and it takes him 3 orders, but he does, I can't remember what the actual classified is called, but it's the use a medium or heavy infantry to zone of control whip roll an enemy model. He does that against the unconscious Famoose up here, and then moves back. So that's done me 3 classifieds plus secure the HVT, which it's going to turn out Kyle is not able to contest. And Kyle rolls into his last turn, actually with a reasonably, like, I think he's got 5 regular orders and some irregular orders left, but he just doesn't have the gas in the tank to push all the way across the table and really seriously contest the scenario positioning. Because I've got multiple, in fact, I still have 3 Zuyongs alive, quote unquote, because the bricked one is still alive in the midfield. I've moved all of the Fanuses out of my deployment zone over the course of the last turn as well, with a combination of jumping and coordinated orders. And so I've got something like, it's probably about 30 points in my zone, a comfortable 90 to 100 points in this zone, and almost no points in Kyle's zone. I wasn't willing to contest that because with the Janbazan, it's a little too, and the Mukhtar, it's too easy for him to outpoint me. But it's difficult for him to get these pieces, right? There's the 30, 36, 34 point pieces far enough across the board to a point where they can outweigh my relatively tenuous control over my rear zone. We do figure out a way, like Kyle plays through his turn, there's a bit of back and forth. He's really not able to, it takes him too many orders to put down this Coom Rider, and that's more or less the turn. He puts down the Magari Brigade LT and the Coom Rider, but doesn't make any serious progress. He just controls his zone. The way that he could potentially have done it is literally by just doing a full-on Hail Mary run with either the Mukhtar or the Janbazan. The Mukhtar would have had to have gotten shot multiple times by a combi rifle, but it does have mimetism, and literally run all the way up and across through here, through a minefield to my side of the table, or alternatively, the Janbazan, who is single wound but would only have to have taken shots from long-range 24-inch shotguns, could have come down here, over there, and then up and around this way to do the same thing, basically. It was, I think, just possible to get one of those 2 pieces through a hail of fire into my my table quadrant, which would have secured Kyle 3 points. And if he'd gotten lucky and accomplished that, would have put the score at 6 points to Dashat Company, 3 points to Haqqislam. As it was, he didn't quite accomplish that, which meant that it was, I think, 7-0. But overall, that's how the game played out. That was the potential final turn push. So, a super interesting game, and especially turn 2 was a game of high highs and low lows, with the tag just getting annihilated in a single barrage from the HMG, but then the Coom Raider bailing me out. Such is the nature of Dashat, such is the nature of mimetic in-cover irregular troops and the Magari Brigade generally. So I can't say I'm disappointed or even particularly surprised by either outcome. Either way, it was a cracking game. Very, very much enjoyed it, and I hope you've enjoyed this battle report. As noted before, if you want to support the channel, you can do so via the Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description or by becoming a channel member. Thanks to the people already who have become channel members. Really means a lot, your support. And otherwise, I will see you, as always, next time.